My husband hit me with a brick for refusing to move in with his mother. You're a starving, worthless freeloader, he screamed, humiliating me in front of everyone. But what he didn't know was about my $7 million inheritance. And that's where the game began. The problem with you is that you got used to eating without cooking, sleeping without paying, existing without being worth anything. That sentence left Michael's mouth with such calm, such coldness, that for a moment it didn't even seem like he was talking to his wife. It was as if he were speaking to a housemaid who had made an unforgivable mistake, or worse, to a stranger. Ella was 29. No children, no luxuries, no social media presence. She hadn't made a ripple in the world, but she had a giant heart, a will that clung to the ground like the roots of a giant redwood, and a dignity she never knew how to negotiate. All she wanted was a home where she could breathe without fear. What she had, instead, was a marriage that seemed more like a prison disguised as a commitment. They lived in a small, barely decorated apartment, where the pictures hanging on the wall had been chosen by Mrs. Miriam Sinclair, Michael's mother, like someone marking their territory with invisible flags. And that was precisely the argument that afternoon. The pressure, the blackmail, the manipulation disguised as needing to move into her mother-in-law's house, a minefield disguised as family. I am not moving into that house, Michael. Not after how your mother treats me. Not after how she talks about me when she thinks I'm not listening. He nervously adjusted his belt. He had taken off his tie, but the rage still hung around his neck. You are so ungrateful. How dare you? My mother gave you a roof when you arrived with 2 suitcases and the face of a nobody. She gave me a roof, yes, but she also took away my voice. She yelled at me in front of your aunts. She called me useless because I can't cook pot roast like hers. She said I wasn't worthy of you because I wasn't a real woman. And you stayed silent. Michael clenched his teeth, looking toward the window. The sun was setting with a warm light, and the bird song filtered in like an irony amidst the storm. Do you really think you can set conditions? You, a woman with no family name, no career, no inheritance, no nothing. Everything you have, I gave you. Ella swallowed. She knew that was coming. He always said it. It was his favorite phrase, his way of reminding her that, according to him, she was beneath everyone. And that was the slowest poison. It wasn't that Michael yelled every day or frequently hit her. It was that invisible kind of violence that slowly stole her self-esteem, spoonful by spoonful, day after day, until it left her hollow. What I have, I earned by cleaning other people's houses since I was 14, she said firmly. You didn't give me anything I couldn't get myself. I forgot. With you I forgot. Forgot what? Who you were. He laughed, a short, dry laugh. Then he walked to the small utility shelf, reached between the old rags, and pulled out a brick. It had been there since they remodeled the kitchen months ago. Ella looked at him, confused. Her heart raced, not because of the brick, but because of his eyes. What are you going to do, Michael? What I should have done since you made me waste my time. Are you crazy? I'm fed up. And without another thought, like someone throwing a rock into the void, Michael raised his arm and hurled the brick straight at her. A dull thud, a crack. The red pain didn't gush out like in the movies, but the silence was just as chilling. Ella fell backward. The last thing she felt was the smell of dampness from the floor and a sharp ringing that pierced her ears like a whistle from hell. Darkness arrived without warning. She woke up with the hospital lights filtering through her eyelids like knives. A nurse leaned over her. Her voice was soft, maternal, one of those that invites you to cry without fear. Can you hear me? Blink if you hear me. Ella did it twice. The pain in her head was unbearable, as if she had a broken bell resonating inside her skull. You're at St. Ignatius Hospital. You arrived by ambulance. A neighbor called emergencies when they heard the thud. And Michael? The nurse paused awkwardly. He said you fell, that you were dizzy. He didn't stay. Ella closed her eyes. She felt the nausea rise in her throat, but it wasn't from the blow, it was from the confirmation. She was alone. Hours later, her head bandaged and her soul shattered, she received a visit from a social worker. She asked if Ella wanted to file a police report. Ella nodded. Her voice was barely a whisper. I want to report my husband. He hit me with a brick. Are there witnesses? No. Just me. And the neighbor who heard the sound, but didn't see anything. Do you have any family who can support you? Ella shook her head. My mother died when I was 18. My dad never wanted to know me. I don't have siblings or children. The assistant took notes. The silence was heavy. Is there any financial support? Do you have anywhere to go when you leave here? No, she replied, her eyes fixed on the ceiling. I don't have anywhere to go, but I'm not alone. The woman looked at her with compassion, like someone hearing a strange phrase, unsure if it was a slip or a warning. Meanwhile, Michael returned to his mother's house. He feigned concern for the neighbors. Miriam, as always, took control. I already took care of the doctor. I slipped him some cash so he won't talk about suspicious fractures. Now what you have to do is erase every trace. Tell her she tripped, that you helped her, that you are willing to take care of her. I don't think she'll buy that, Michael said with a cigarette between his fingers. She looked at me differently, as if she wasn't afraid anymore. Then make her get it back, his mother replied with a frosty tone. Because if she talks, we all fall. 2 days later, Ella was discharged. The doctor looked at her carefully. He spoke to her without witnesses. The blow almost cracked your skull. You are lucky. We reconstructed you with titanium, but there is something I want you to know. Ella looked at him, bracing for bad news. It's not my duty to say this, but I've seen many cases. And yours has a name, attempted homicide. You didn't fall. Someone tried to take your life, and they will most likely try again. That night, in the temporary shelter where she was transferred, Ella sat in front of the mirror, touched the bandage covering her forehead, and suddenly, like a breeze from other times, a phrase crossed her mind. The voice was her grandmother's. A broken woman is not a weak woman. She is a woman who learned to use her scars as a shield. Ella closed her eyes. The tears didn't fall because something inside her had already changed. She didn't know how, she didn't know when, but she knew this was not going to end here. That morning, on the local television, a police report appeared saying, "Woman stable after domestic fall. Husband denies accusations." No follow-up. There was no indignation. Just another woman in the statistics of those who don't matter. What no one knew, what neither Michael nor Miriam nor the whole city imagined, was that Ella held a secret that would change everything. And that story was just beginning. The silence of the shelter felt like a shroud. The thin walls let in the sighs of other women who, like her, slept with one eye open and their hearts shattered. Some cried under the sheets, others murmured names that no longer answered. Ella didn't cry, she clenched her teeth. Every night, her thoughts were a swarm of memories, strategies, and loose phrases that repeated like a litany. Survive, resist, respond. The next morning was different. The headache was still present, but it was no longer just physical. It was a mixture of frustration and powerlessness. At 9 sharp, a volunteer from the shelter took her to the Women's Justice Center. A pink-painted building that promised hope, but smelled of bureaucracy. Full name? The official asked without looking her in the eye. Ella Harper Morales. Age? 29. Reason for the report? Ella took a deep breath. Her hands were sweating. Attempted homicide. My husband hit me on the head with a brick. The official stopped writing. She glanced at her. Do you have proof? I just had surgery. I have x-rays, medical reports, photos of the hematoma, auditory witnesses, but not visual. I'm sorry, the woman interrupted, typing slowly. If no one saw it, it will be difficult to sustain. You know how these things are. Ella looked at her in disbelief. These things? Are you going to take the report or not? Of course, the official said, returning to typing with feigned diligence. But I need to know something else. Does the accused have any ties to municipal figures? His mother. Her name is Miriam Sinclair. She worked for 30 years as the secretary of Judge Robert Canales. I think they are friends. The woman stopped writing again. She smiled nervously. Ah, I see. 3 hours later, Ella left the center with an unstamped sheet and an appointment to continue with the case evaluation. She knew what that meant: postponement, exhaustion, institutional silence. The worst thing was not the lack of justice. It was that look of poor woman that followed her from the moment she entered. They didn't see her as a victim, but as a nuisance. That night, sitting in front of a small mirror, she took an oxidized pair of scissors she found in the room. She looked at her reflection intently. She was no longer the same. Not only because of the scar covered by bandages, she was a colder, clearer, more dangerous woman. Without blinking, she cut a lock of her hair, then another. And another. The metallic sound of the scissors filled the room like an act of purification. Being broken doesn't mean I am broken, she murmured with clenched lips. The next day, she tried to file the report directly with the district attorney's office. This time, a man in a suit with the face of a board official received her. He reviewed her medical file, nodded without interest, and ended up telling her it was better to reach an amicable agreement with her husband. Amicable agreement? Ella said, feeling her blood boil. Look, Ms. Harper, in cases like these, the ideal is to avoid emotional wear and tear. Perhaps what happened was an accident. A brick to the head is an accident? Are you implying that I deserved it? The official looked uncomfortable. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the system is slow, and there are smarter ways to solve these things. That was the day Ella understood that no one was going to save her, that the system that was supposed to protect her was burying her alive. Back at the shelter, the psychologist called her into her office. She was a woman in her 50s, with a kind face and a calm voice. She offered her tea, but Ella refused. She didn't want to feel comfortable. She couldn't. I read your file, the psychologist said, opening a folder. Have you considered leaving the city? Fleeing. Don't call it fleeing. Call it protecting yourself, and letting them believe I left out of shame. Sometimes silence is the only tool we have while we prepare another strategy. Ella didn't answer, but something inside her was activated. She wasn't running away. She was brewing something bigger, something no one would see coming. The next morning, she disappeared without a word. She left no note or luggage, just a made bed and an empty notebook on the nightstand. Meanwhile, Michael had returned to his routine. The news of Ella's hospitalization had lasted exactly 3 days among the neighborhood gossip. Then it vanished. He went out with his friends, laughed, played cards. No one questioned him. No one looked at him with guilt. One afternoon at a barbecue, between beers and misogynistic jokes, one of his friends asked, "What about Ella?" She left. Michael took a long drink and shrugged. She got fed up, or I fed her up. I don't know. She was too intense, always complaining, crying over everything. And they say she was in the hospital, right? Nonsense. She tripped. You know how they are. They play the victim and then ruin your life. Laughter filled the patio. No one dared to doubt. No one wanted to be the one to make things awkward. Only one woman at the gathering, a friend's sister, looked at him with different eyes, as if she could see behind his smile, as if she knew. That night, at Miriam's house, mother and son talked in the dining room. The lights were low, the table impeccable, and an air of false peace floated in the environment. What if she shows up? Michael asked while biting into a piece of steak. She won't. Women like her break easily. She has no family, no money, no support. But if she talks? If she dares to talk, you say she fell alone, that she was drinking, that you argued, and she tripped. And if she presents medical papers? They won't work without witnesses. Besides, I have friends at the DA's office. They already made sure that report disappeared. Trust me, son. The worst thing she can do is come back. And if she does, no one will believe her. Michael nodded, but he wasn't calm. Deep down, there was something that disturbed him. It wasn't remorse, it was something else. Fear, not of Ella, but of what he didn't know about her. Are you sure she didn't have family with money? None. She comes from a poor area. Her mother was a seamstress. Her father took off before she was born. The only close figure was an old woman who lived in the country, an eccentric grandmother, but she died years ago. Did she leave anything? Don't be ridiculous. If she had anything, she wouldn't have let herself be humiliated like she did. Miriam said that last part with a mixture of contempt and arrogance, the same one she always had when talking about Ella. While Michael slept peacefully that night, in another part of the city, Ella descended from a bus with a single backpack over her shoulder and a completely new look. Her hair was short, her eyes darker, and her steps firmer. She carried no documents, no identity, only her memory and her secret. No one knew that before being hospitalized, she had received a sealed letter from a notary. A letter she didn't open in front of anyone. Inside that envelope was more than words. There was a legacy, an open door, an opportunity no one imagined existed. In that new city, she started from scratch. She changed her name, rented a small room with a shared bathroom. She worked for weeks cleaning offices, scrubbing floors, picking up trash. No one suspected that while she swept, her mind analyzed movements, names, strategies. Every night she wrote. In the new notebook she bought on the first day, she wrote down every name, every contact, every fragment of her plan. She didn't call it revenge. Not yet. She called it order. Michael continued with his life, more relaxed, more brazen. He was already seen with a younger woman, a former co-worker who had admired him for years. He told her another story. My ex-wife was unstable. She threatened to commit suicide if I didn't do what she wanted. One day, she threw herself on the floor and hit herself. I just wanted to help her, but they blamed me. The young woman listened tenderly. She believed him. She even offered him support if he wanted to reopen the legal case. It's not worth it, Michael would say. I already closed that chapter. I just want to live in peace. But peace was not destined to last because while he lied, Ella wove. And when women weave stories with pain in their hands, it's not to keep warm, it's to trap. And what was coming was going to break everything. The city was different, bigger, noisier, more indifferent. It was exactly what Ella needed. No one asked too many questions. No one noticed the woman scrubbing stairs in an office building, nor the one who passed by at dawn with a backpack over her shoulder and her gaze lost on the asphalt. To others, she was just another invisible woman in the city. She settled into a boarding house with damp walls and beds that creaked at the slightest movement. She paid weekly in cash. She used a false name, Eleanor Seymour. The landlady didn't ask questions. The room was dark, with a small window that barely let in any light, but Ella didn't complain. She hung a blue sheet on the wall, and over it, a map that she began to fill with names, dates, and red circles. In the center, Michael's name in capital letters, underlined 3 times. Every night she wrote. Sometimes they were memories, other times loose ideas. Some pages were for tracing mental routes, analyzing possibilities. Her notebook became an extension of her, a combination of a diary, a war manual, and a life file. She didn't speak to anyone, but her mind never stopped. She thought about moves, about how to hit without being seen, about how to leave marks that hurt more than a brick. In the mornings, she worked cleaning. At noon, she ate lunch alone in a diner near the market. In the afternoons, she went to the community center where free classes were offered for women: basic law, self-defense, financial literacy. Ella enrolled in all of them. The teacher who taught law was an older woman with white hair and a calm voice who noticed the intensity with which Ella observed her from the first moment. "Do you already know something about laws?" she asked once after class. "Only what was denied to me." "Then you will understand that knowledge is the only place where justice does not always escape." Ella smiled for the first time in weeks. In the self-defense classes, the instructor taught them how to break free from a hold, how to unbalance an aggressor, how to use their voice as a tool for protection. Ella didn't talk much, but she was the fastest learner. The instructor watched her during a practice session and told her something she didn't forget. "You're not fighting with your body, you're fighting with something else. And that's more dangerous than any technique." Ella held his gaze. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She dedicated her nights to learning something more. Investment, financial management, emotional intelligence, information manipulation, digital reputation. She didn't find everything in books. Some she learned by observing, listening, putting loose pieces together. At the boarding house, she met a woman, Paula, who worked as a secretary in a law firm. One night, while smoking on the back staircase, Ella tossed a question into the air. "Do you know if they can track someone just with a first and last name?" "It depends. If you have something more like a date or place of birth, it can be easier." "Who are you looking for?" "Someone who hid behind the system. Then you have to learn how the sewers work. Because to hunt rats, you have to know which gutters they hide in." That phrase was etched in her mind. Ella began visiting legal bookstores, buying used books, making copies, highlighting, reading until she fell asleep with burning eyes. She learned about legal loopholes, about how files are manipulated, how reports disappear without a trace. Everything that had crushed her before, she now studied like a scientist studies the poison that almost killed her. One day, she received an envelope. The postman found her at the entrance of the boarding house. "MS, Eleanor Ruiz." She hesitated for a second, then nodded. The envelope was thick with golden edges. The sender, Castello's notary. The same signature as the envelope she received at the hospital. She went up to her room, turned on the desk lamp, and carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. She recognized the calligraphy immediately. It was from her grandmother. But she didn't read the content. Not yet. She placed it inside a black notebook she kept under the bed. It wasn't the time. She knew what was in that letter could change her life, but she hadn't finished preparing the ground yet. Her silence was not cowardice, it was calculus. The transformation was not only intellectual, it was also physical. She changed the way she walked, her posture, her gaze. In a second-hand store, she bought sober yet elegant clothes, sturdy shoes, blouses that didn't draw attention but commanded authority. She began practicing in front of the mirror. She imitated speeches by powerful women she found in old videos. She imitated the gestures, the pauses, the rhythm. She wasn't just building a new version of herself. She was creating a woman who would never be a victim again. "Sometimes silence is the deadliest weapon," her mentor told her in a strategic communication class. "And sometimes the hardest to sustain," Ella replied, speaking aloud for the first time in class. The others turned to look at her. The intensity of her voice, though brief, made it clear that a storm was brewing behind her apparent calm. During that month, Ella made several mysterious calls from public telephones. She used codes, asked for names only she knew, tracked down contacts her grandmother had once mentioned. Some didn't answer, others, upon hearing her name, hung up without a word, but one, just one, answered with a hoarse, tired voice. Ella? Celia's granddaughter? Yes. She said you would call. I never thought it was true. I need your help. Then come get it. Ella wrote down the address in her notebook. It wasn't a nearby city. It wasn't an accessible place, but she knew she had to go. Before that, she organized her room. She burned several pages of her notebook. The important ones she kept in double copy. One hidden in a cookie tin, the other in a sealed envelope at the pensions administration office. The night before leaving, she looked at the map again. Michael's name was still in the center, but now there were other circles around. She wasn't alone, there were other names, other pieces. And that letter from her grandmother, still unopened, remained waiting like a promise suspended in time. The next morning, she took a bus toward the address she had been given. It was more than an 8-hour trip. During the journey, she looked out the window without seeing. Her mind reviewed everything she had learned, everything she had lost. She knew there was no going back. Upon arriving, she met a man in his 60s, weathered skin, shaky hands. He opened the door without saying a word. The house was simple but well-maintained. On a shelf, a photo of her grandmother, young, with the same determined look Ella now carried. You look like her now, the man said as he poured coffee. That's what they tell me. Do you know why you're here? My grandmother left something for me. Something only you can give me. The man nodded, got up, walked to an old cabinet, and took out a metal box. He handed it to her without ceremony. This is yours, and only you will know what to do with it. Ella opened it. Inside, notarial documents, bank codes, property certificates, and a small notebook handwritten by Celia. It was a manual, a life testament, a guide for a war her grandmother knew Ella would have to fight. That night, alone in a guest room, Ella finally opened the letter. Her grandmother's words were a dagger and a hug at the same time. My child, if you are reading this, it is because the world was cruel to you. I have no way to prevent your pain, but I can give you the weapons so that you are never invisible again. You have everything you need to build your empire, not for revenge, but to free others. But if you decide to go the other way, I will not judge you, because I know that not all broken hearts choose to forgive. Ella closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. It wasn't sadness, it was recognition. Celia knew her. Even though she was gone, she knew her better than anyone. The next morning, she said goodbye to the man with a handshake. There were no promises or speeches, just silent gratitude. She returned to the city with more than documents. She returned with purpose. The map filled up again. New points, new connections. The network was expanding, and Michael, still playing innocent, didn't know that his time was beginning to run out, because Ella's silence was not submission, it was strategy. And she was about to speak with facts, with precision, with power. What was coming no one would see coming, not even him. The city was preparing for a night of lights, speeches, and plastic smiles. It was the annual gala of the Pro-Society Foundation, one of the most coveted events by the local elite. Businessmen, judges, politicians, stiff-necked wives, and photographers looking for fresh meat gathered in the main ballroom of the Regina Hotel. Long dresses, black ties, watered-down wine, and empty words floated in the air. At 8:17 p.m., the main doors opened with a murmur of expectation. A figure appeared under the entrance arch, elegant, tall, walking with an almost military confidence, wearing a fitted black dress, moderate neckline, but with a perfect cut that screamed power. Her hair was pulled back, her eyes precisely lined. Her presence stopped conversations without the need to speak. No one recognized her at first. Some thought she was a foreign ambassador, others a high-level executive. But 2 more seconds were enough for Miriam Sinclair, sitting at a table near the entrance, to slowly lower her glass, paralyzed. It was Ella, or at least the woman who was once Ella, because what they saw now bore no resemblance to the young woman who entered that circle years ago with tense shoulders and a subdued voice. This woman was something else, a polished, hardened, reborn version, and she wore a new name. Good evening, Ella said as she approached the reception table, where a nervous young man was searching for her name on the list. You should look under Elena C. Moreno. The boy swallowed, searched the sheet, and nodded quickly. Ah, of course. President of the Haven Life Foundation. Exactly. Thank you. She took her pass and entered, leaving a trail of subtle perfume and silent threat. Her heels marked a firm rhythm on the white marble. With every step, the murmurs grew. Someone important had arrived, and no one knew exactly who she was. Only Miriam, in her corner, felt a spasm of panic in her stomach. Her glass trembled in her hand. Michael, standing next to a group of influential men, saw her seconds later. His expression immediately changed. He smiled like someone seeing an ex-girlfriend they can joke with. But that smile was wiped away as soon as his eyes met hers. Because Ella did not look away. She looked at him as one observes a lost object on the floor. Then, with a small but devastating gesture, she ignored him. She kept walking. She passed a meter from him. Not a greeting, not a blink, just air. Michael lowered his gaze. His friends looked at him, confused. "Do you know her?" "No, she just looked familiar." But his voice no longer had the confident tone from before. Ella was seated at the main table next to the event director, a retired judge, a renowned journalist, and a real estate mogul. She was introduced as the new president of Haven Life, an organization with branches in several cities, dedicated to the protection and reintegration of women victims of violence. No one questioned her sudden appearance in the public world. The rich don't ask many questions when the business card shines. During dinner, Ella conversed with a calm, confident, and polite voice. She spoke of statistics, social impact, and invisible women. She used precise words, firm glances, and calculated silences. Every gesture was choreography, every phrase a dagger wrapped in velvet. Miriam couldn't stand it. She got up from her table and walked to the restroom with quick steps. In the mirror, she looked at the new wrinkles hanging from her neck, the makeup smeared by sweat. Ella had returned, but not as a victim, as something much more dangerous, a woman of power. Michael went after her minutes later. "Mom, we need to talk. What the hell is she doing here? How did she dare to enter this circle? I have no idea, but she's not the same. She has contacts. Did you see where they seated her? She's playing. She's provoking us. We have to get ahead of this." Michael nodded but said no more. Fear crept under his skin like hungry termites. Meanwhile, Ella remained firm in her position. She didn't drink, she didn't let her guard down. She listened carefully, and occasionally wrote names in her pocket notebook. Names of allies, names of those who laughed with Michael, names of those who applauded speeches of equality while paying for silence in their companies. At the end of the gala, she approached the microphone to give a brief speech. Everyone fell silent. The expectation was palpable. The unknown lady was going to speak. "Thank you for this opportunity, for giving me 5 minutes to talk about what no one wants to see. For years, I have traveled through cities, streets, hospitals, cemeteries. I have seen what is left of women when love turns into a cage. I have hugged 10-year-old girls who no longer believe in men. I have cleaned blood from floors where justice never arrived. And I have promised myself that silence, the one that kills us so slowly, will not win again." Pause. "Today I do not come to ask for donations, I come to ask for truths. And if my presence makes anyone uncomfortable, I assure you it is because they have something to hide." Applause. When she finished, some approached to ask for her contact. They gave her cards, offered collaborations. Ella accepted everything with a polite smile, but she already knew who was useful and who just wanted to show off. On her way out, a young journalist asked for an exclusive interview. Ella accepted, but made a condition. "I need you to help me leak an anonymous audio without names but played in full." The intrigued journalist accepted. 2 days later, an audio was leaked on social media. The voice was unmistakable. Michael, in a relaxed tone, said, "Women are like dogs. If you treat them well, they step all over you." And I kept Ella in line with threats. She was so useless she couldn't even cry properly. And I'm not even sure the child she lost was mine. The scandal was immediate. The recording went viral. It was shared on social media, in women's groups, in legal associations. Ella was not mentioned, but everyone knew. Everyone who needed to know understood. Michael denied everything. He said it was a setup, a campaign against him, but his company began receiving calls. Clients withdrew. A supplier canceled a $1 million contract. His boss asked him to take some time off to clear his name. Miriam exploded at her house. "I told you to control her. I told you she was smarter than you. I wasn't the one who brought her into our lives." Michael retorted with rage. "It was you. You were the one who humiliated her, who turned her into this." Miriam slapped him. It was quick, painful, almost symbolic, the end of a sick alliance. While their world crumbled, Ella advanced. In silence. She anonymously purchased one of Michael's family's properties, a house in the countryside where Miriam spent her weekends. She did it through a trust using a third party. No one suspected until one day an eviction notice arrived. Miriam didn't understand. What do you mean this house is no longer ours? Apparently they sold it to an investment fund, but I never signed anything. Your brother did. He was desperate for debts. He sold everything. He never told you. That same week, an investigative journalist published an article about labor abuses at the company where Michael worked. There were testimonials, screenshots, documents. The scandal grew, and in every line, an invisible shadow seemed to be pulling the strings. Ella didn't speak, didn't give interviews, didn't show herself in public. She only appeared when necessary. An ice lady who didn't need to shout to set everything on fire. An old friend of Michael's called him one night, worried. Did you mess with someone dangerous? No, just with a woman who didn't know her place. Well, I inform you that that woman now sits at tables where you are no longer welcome. Michael hung up and threw the phone against the wall. In the darkness of his new apartment, much more modest than the previous one, Ella sat in front of her map. She crossed off a name, then another. The network was closing in. She was not in a hurry because she knew what was coming was not yet the end. It was just the beginning of the reckoning. And the best part was that until that moment, not a single person knew the true power she was about to unleash. No one knew about her inheritance or her true identity. The ice lady was just warming up, and the fire was closer than everyone thought. The sun was setting slowly behind the buildings, and the air in the city smelled of broken promises. In the cafes, the newscasters murmured the same things with different faces. The scandal about businessman Michael Sinclair had exploded like a time bomb. Social media was on fire. Opinion columns speculated. The usual silence of the circles of power had been fractured, but no one yet knew who had lit the fuse or why it had been done with such precision. They would find out soon. It all began with a publication. It wasn't a denunciation, it was a profile. An investigation signed by the journalist Eva Aranda, a woman feared for her rigor and deep sources. The article appeared on the digital front page of a national medium with a headline that left everyone silent. The Ice Lady, the untold story of Eleanor C. Moreno, the hidden heiress of the women's revolution. The text began with a black and white image of an elderly woman, firm gaze, a scarf around her neck, surrounded by girls and women on a small farm in the south of the country. The woman was named Celia Morales, Ella's grandmother, an activist who in the 90s had founded the first clandestine shelter for battered women in rural areas, when talking about feminism was still considered a sin. Celia had not only accumulated respect. She had made investments, bought land, silently inherited a modest but solid empire, and without anyone knowing, she had left everything to her granddaughter, Ella. The journalist reconstructed the story with surgical precision. The orphan girl who grew up among sowing and fields, the teenager who worked cleaning houses, the quiet young woman who one day disappeared from the records and returned as Elena C. Moreno, president of Haven Life, a foundation with national reach, with branches in 6 states, supported by foreign companies and backed by a network of influential women. The story exploded in the media. The photo of Ella, dressed in black at the charity gala, was shared millions of times. The country wanted to know who that woman was, how a victim had become a strategist, how she had moved from silence to power. And then finally Ella spoke. In an exclusive interview with the same journalist who wrote the article, she appeared seated in front of the camera, with no obvious makeup, her hair pulled back and a calm gaze. She didn't hesitate, she didn't act, she didn't lower her voice. I am not a survivor. That word makes me think I am still trapped in what they did to me. I did not survive. I rebuilt. They knocked me down, they ignored me, they broke me, but I didn't stay there. I became the architect of my destiny. The interviewer looked at her without interrupting. Ella continued. For years they told me I wasn't enough, that I should be grateful for the little I had, that I should shut up, that I should stay. But what no one knew is that within me there was a more powerful inheritance than money. That of a grandmother who never gave up and who taught me that if there was no place for us, then we would build it. The interview went viral in a matter of hours. People cried, commented, shared with phrases like, for all the Ellis in the world to stand up, or this is not fiction, it is the reality we refuse to see. Michael couldn't breathe. He was in his apartment with the windows closed, watching as his name was dragged through the mud. Not only for what he did, but because everyone already knew that he had hit a rich and powerful woman. The humiliation was double, triple. His phone wouldn't stop ringing, not for support, but for demands. Clients withdrawing, lawyers abandoning him, colleagues blocking him. The television continued broadcasting fragments of the report. Images of the shelters funded by Ella, testimonials from women who called her a faceless angel. Stories of lives saved thanks to her intervention. All of that she had achieved alone. Miriam, watching the interview from her room, screamed. She threw the remote control against the wall. She breathed heavily. She paced back and forth as if the ground were sinking beneath her feet. Then she clutched her chest. Her blood pressure spiked. She fell into a chair. She tried to scream, but only a thread of voice escaped. The domestic service found her minutes later on the floor, convulsing with blue lips. The hospital confirmed a severe, extensive stroke, with minimal chances of recovery. Michael arrived at the hospital the next day. He found her connected to tubes, her gaze lost. For the first time in his life, he didn't have his mother as an ally. He was alone. Meanwhile, another bomb exploded. Mariella, the woman Michael had been dating since the scandal, publicly reported him for psychological abuse. She accused him of manipulating her, lying about his past, emotionally controlling her, and threatening to take away her opportunities if she spoke. She presented conversations, messages, and audios. Her testimony was published as part of a special titled, "The Monsters in Suits." Michael was summoned to testify. This time there were no favors, no friendly judges. The system that had once turned its back on Ella now turned to look at him with a magnifying glass. At the epicenter of the chaos, Ella remained calm. In her office, an austere but functional building in the heart of the city, she directed her team with discipline. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't celebrate victories. She just made sure every step was calculated. It wasn't just about him, it was about something bigger, shaking the system that allowed thousands of Michaels to exist. Her lawyer entered the room with a discreet smile. "We have access to the Espinoza Family Foundation documents. There are irregularities. Money laundering, evasion, falsification of signatures." "Perfect," Ella replied. "But don't publish anything yet. Let them squirm a little more." Outside, women waited their turn to receive legal, psychological, and medical help. The offices of Haven Life never stopped. It was a silent army, a parallel system, all funded by the inheritance Michael never knew existed. By that grandmother he tried to reduce to a crazy old woman, by that woman who, from her grave, had armed the first domino that was now toppling empires. In the last part of the televised interview, the journalist asked Ella if, after everything, she was seeking justice. She replied coldly, "I didn't want justice. I wanted something better. I wanted truth. I wanted to open the eyes of a society that pretends this doesn't happen. And if some crumble in the process, it's because they deserve it." Ella's words circulated for weeks. They became a motto, a campaign phrase, an anthem. Meanwhile, Michael sank alone. His company went bankrupt. His accounts were frozen due to irregularities. His reputation was buried. And in the middle of all that collapse, in the darkest room of his empty house, he finally understood. Ella was never weak, never submissive. She had only hidden to observe, learn, and attack with precision. Because when a woman survives an attempted murder and resurfaces with money, power, and truth, she doesn't stop until the work is finished. And Ella hadn't finished yet. Michael's name was destroyed, his legacy reduced to ashes, his mother confined to a bed without responding to stimuli, his last lover testifying against him. And the allies who once protected him now crossed the street to avoid greeting him. Every piece had moved exactly as Ella had planned. Every act was surgical. She had not only won the battle, she had rewritten the rules of the game. But the body doesn't understand justice, nor does it measure achievements or victories. It only carries the wounds and, in the most absolute silence, decides when to speak. It was on one of those mornings when Ella was working from her central office at Haven Life that she felt her coffee tasted like metal. She attributed it to stress. Days later, a nosebleed interrupted a meeting with investors. Then came the extreme fatigue. Not the kind of exhaustion that is relieved by sleep. It was something else, a kind of internal weight, as if her own blood was dragging through her veins. She had tests done without telling anyone, alone, without assistance, without her lawyer, without her mentor. When the doctor entered the room with the already rehearsed expression of someone who gives bad news every day, Ella didn't blink. "What is it?" she asked with a dry voice. "Advanced acute myeloid leukemia. Your marrow is deteriorating rapidly. The abnormal cells are reproducing uncontrollably." Ella looked at him as if he were talking about someone else. "Options. Chemotherapy can delay the progression. A bone marrow transplant, under ideal conditions, could extend the prognosis. But your blood type is rare, and compatibility is difficult. I don't want to give you false hope. If you don't respond, you might have between 6 and 8 months. 9 if everything goes well. She just nodded. Do you need time to process it? No. I understand. Ella left the hospital walking straight. She didn't cry. She didn't call anyone. She didn't write in her notebook. She got into the car, started the engine, but didn't move it. She stayed staring through the windshield, as if the streets were a movie she was no longer interested in seeing. Her fingers trembled. She put her hand on her abdomen as if she wanted to tear out the sadness, but she didn't break. She just took a deep breath. She returned to the office, saying nothing. The next morning, she gathered her executive team. No one noticed anything strange. Ella had always been discreet, calculating, strong, so strong that sometimes she was frightening. During the week, she continued her routines as always. She coordinated the inauguration of a new branch in the north of the country. She gave a conference. She met with sponsors. But at night in her apartment, she vomited in silence. She showered sitting down because her legs no longer responded the same way. The inheritance that had sustained her for so long could not now buy her the only thing she had left to lose: time. One night, as she was closing the main branch, she walked through the shelter corridors as she did in the early days. In one of the rooms, a girl about 9 years old watched her from a corner. Ella approached. "Can I sit with you?" The girl nodded wordlessly. "Your name?" "Amber." "That's a nice name." "I don't like it. He gave it to me. The one who hit me." Ella swallowed. "Are you better here?" "Yes, but I have nightmares. I don't know if I'll ever sleep peacefully." "I didn't sleep peacefully when I was your age either," Ella said. "Did you also escape from a monster?" The silence was long. The words came out with a knot. "Yes. And it took me many years to stop believing he was breathing down my neck." Amber rested her head on Ella's shoulder without asking permission. Ella didn't move. Not a tear, just that warm heat that no revenge gives. After that night, Ella knew what she had to do. She wasn't going to spend her last months hiding, nor was she going to seek compassion. She wouldn't let her story end in silence. She decided that all the fire she had ignited would not be extinguished with her departure. It had to become something more, something that would burn when she was not around. She called her mentor, Isabel, the woman who years ago taught her to speak with her body and think like a strategist. She met her in a cafe far from the center. She wore a cap, dark glasses, and baggy clothes. Her skin no longer glowed. Her gaze was the same, but there was something muted in her pupils. Isabel looked at her carefully. "What's wrong?" Ella didn't answer immediately. "I have leukemia. Terminal." Isabel put the cup down mid-sip. She didn't ask if it was true. Ella was not a woman who dramatized. "What are you going to do?" "Become a voice." "You already are." "No. I've been a symbol, a revenge. Now I want to be a legacy." Isabel held her hand for the first time since they met. "Then start writing. Don't let your story die with you." Ella spent the following weeks writing letters. They were not autobiographies, they were not confessions, they were messages for unknown women. Each letter was addressed to a woman without a name, to the one who sleeps in fear, to the one who has not yet spoken, to the one who lost everything, to the one who still believes no one sees her. She wrote them with a trembling hand, but with her soul on fire. Then she delivered them in anonymous envelopes to the shelters. Each letter was a beacon. She started recording a video, not a public one. It was an audiovisual testament. She recorded it alone from her apartment in front of a small camera, with no production, no filters. "My name was Ella. Then I was many other things. And what I want to be clear is that you don't need to have millions to regain your voice. I had them, and they didn't save me from the blow. They saved me from giving up. If you're watching this, maybe you don't remember me. Maybe my story is just another one among many. But if one thing is clear to you, let it be this. You are not the one who is broken, the world is, and it can be fixed, even if it's one piece at a time." She saved each recording on an encrypted memory stick. She left clear instructions in her legal will. The day of her death, the video had to be published along with her manifesto, because it wasn't about her, it was about all of them. The deterioration came faster than she thought. Her marrow began to fail. She had to be admitted. She refused to receive visits from anyone outside the shelter. She didn't want pity. She just wanted to know that everything was still working without her. In the last days, she asked to be moved to a room where she could see the sky. One of the volunteers brought her fresh flowers. Another read the news, and a group of girls, including Amber, sent her a drawing. A woman with a cape and a smile. She taped it in front of the bed. Isabel visited her the day the doctor confirmed the end was near. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "I'm angry," Ella replied. "Because I don't have time for more. You did more in 3 years than others do in a lifetime." "It's not enough." Isabel stroked her hair. "It will be enough. Because you are not alone. Because you planted an army. Because you left us a map." In her final hours, Ella asked for one of her letters to be read to her. A random one. The nurse's voice trembled at first, but then grew strong. "My dear you, I know today you believe no one hears you. But we are here, those of us who escaped, those of us who survived, those of us who rebuilt, and also those who did not make it, but whose memory burns in every step we take. You are not alone. Don't be silent, don't break, don't disappear, because one day someone will see you as I see you now. Strong, alive, unbreakable." Ella closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek, and she smiled for the first time without weight. When her heart stopped beating, the city slept. But her story was just beginning. The city awoke with a different air. There were no announcements in the newspapers or urgent bulletins on television, but something was felt in the atmosphere. On the murals in the neighborhoods, someone had taped a black and white photo with a simple phrase. She didn't live for revenge. She lived so others wouldn't have to. No one signed the phrase, no one claimed it. It wasn't necessary. Ella was gone. Her body had stopped resisting on a calm morning with the sound of the wind entering through the hospital window. But her presence was still alive in every corridor of the shelters, in every notebook scratched with plans, in every woman who once dared to say enough after knowing her story. And now, her final act was about to be revealed. Weeks before she left, she prepared everything. Every step, every document, every word was calculated with a precision that only someone who knew they were at the limit could have plotted. Her lawyer, Martha, was in charge of fulfilling every instruction. The will was not read in private. Ella didn't want secrets, she wanted impact. The event was organized at the city's Central Theater. There was no red carpet, but there was an endless line of women who had traveled from different parts of the country. Some with scarves around their necks, others with t-shirts stamped with her name. Many had not met Ella in person, but they felt she was their own. It was the first time so many broken stories would gather in one place, not to mourn but to build. The stage was decorated with dried flowers, nothing shiny, nothing ostentatious, just as she wanted. In the center, an empty chair and a giant screen behind it. Martha took the microphone and spoke with a trembling voice. Ella left very clear instructions. This event is not to say goodbye to her. It is to continue her. Today, officially, her foundation ceases to be an individual project and becomes a national network of support, legal advice, medical attention, and shelter for women who need it, regardless of their history, age, or place of origin. The screen lit up. A video recorded weeks earlier appeared. Ella was sitting in front of a white wall with no decorations. Her face was different from the one the country had seen on television. Her face was tired, without makeup, with pale skin, but her eyes remained firm, fixed, burning. If you are watching this, it means I am gone. But I want you to understand something before I continue. I didn't get here by strength. I got here by rage, by pain, by everything they denied me. And yes, I used my pain as a weapon, as a shield, as a compass. I don't regret it. But with time, I understood that if everything ended with me, then it would have been for nothing. She paused, taking a deep breath. I didn't live for revenge. I lived so others wouldn't have to. The silence in the theater was absolute. Some women pressed handkerchiefs to their mouths, others did not hide their tears. Ella kept talking, but it was no longer just her, it was a collective voice. They left you alone. I know. They blamed you. They told you were exaggerating, that you provoked it, that you should have kept quiet. They told me that too. Many times I believed the story of love that hurts, of patience as a virtue, of obedience as respect, and all I achieved was losing myself. But I came back, not because I was stronger, but because I was fed up with being afraid. The image froze. Martha went up to the stage again and read the final fragment of the will. And I leave every penny of my inheritance to Haven Life. All my properties, investments, and copyrights will be used solely and exclusively to sustain the operation of the centers, create new spaces, guarantee trained personnel, and finance studies for young survivors. No individual, including former collaborators, partners, or blood relatives, may personally benefit from my assets. The legacy is not mine, it is for all of them. The ovation was long. There were no exaggerated claps, but that kind of recognition that comes from the deepest part of the soul, the kind of tribute that is not rehearsed. The next day, the main newscasts covered the event, but it was not the summary of Ella's life that moved people. It was what came next. A young woman named Allie, 20 years old, appeared in a video recorded from one of the newest branches of Haven Life. Sitting on a wooden bench, she held a worn notebook with the name Ella handwritten on the cover. Allie had a scar on her neck, sunken eyes, and a voice that broke every 3 words. She looked at the camera and said, "I didn't know how to write, I didn't know how to read, but I read every one of the letters Ella left. I memorized one. I repeated it to myself while I healed my bruises in a station bathroom. Today they gave me this notebook. They told me I can write my story. I don't know if it will turn out well, but I want to start with this. I am also alive, and I also want someone to hear what I have to say." Allie lowered her gaze, then raised it again with a determination she didn't have a week ago. If you are listening to this, thank you. Because you are looking at me as no one ever looked at me. Social media was flooded with similar messages. Women publishing fragments of letters, teenagers recounting their first steps out of harmful environments, elderly women revealing stories they never dared to tell even their daughters. Ella's death did not close her story, it amplified it. Michael, from his apartment, watched the transmission of the event. Not by choice. Someone sent him the link with an anonymous note that read, "This is what you let go." He watched it all. He didn't cry, he didn't scream. He just remained still as if the air had turned to cement. His name no longer appeared in the media. Not due to forgetfulness, but due to irrelevance. Miriam, from her hospital bed, couldn't see the event, but her nurse told her about it. She spoke to her about the video, the final phrase, "The girls who now said Ella's name, as one says the name of an older sister." Miriam closed her eyes. No one knew if it was out of sadness or resignation. On her lips, for the first time in months, a thin line was drawn. It wasn't a smile, nor was it remorse, just the gesture of someone who understands that control, in the end, was never real. In the following weeks, Haven Life multiplied its reach. New branches opened. Other foundations joined. Volunteers crossed entire cities just to give talks, serve food, and listen to stories. There was something different in the air, as if the world, even for a moment, was willing to look at what it always refused to see. One morning, Allie left a letter at the entrance of the shelter. It was for Ella. No one asked for it. No one read it. They just placed it in a chest along with many others. Every week, dozens arrived, letters without an apparent recipient, letters that spoke of fear, of pain, but also of light. It was the echo of a voice that had not been extinguished. Months later, a group of young people organized a vigil in the Central Park. They didn't ask for permission, they just arrived with candles, with notebooks, with phrases written on banners. Ella lives in every word. No more silence. We are inheritance, not a scar. And when the camera turned to show the face of one of those young people, Allie was seen with the same notebook, sitting under a tree, writing. Her handwriting was clumsy, messy, but firm. The last sentence she wrote that night said, "Ella is not dead. She lives in my story, and today I begin to tell it." Thus it ended, not with a closure, but with a continuation. Because when a woman who was broken decides to rebuild and turn that pain into a voice, a network, a pair of hands, it is no longer just her story. It is the story of all of them. And that cannot be silenced. Many people are going through a similar situation. We hope her voice lives in you. Share this story and be part of the change. If you liked this story, I invite you to leave a comment about what you felt when listening to it. And if you have been through a similar situation of betrayal, I would love for you to share your valuable opinion. Remember to tell me what city you are watching this video from. I would be very honored if you leave me a like, share the video with a friend or family member, and subscribe to the channel. Don't miss the next surprising story that is appearing on your screen right now. We have entertainment guaranteed exclusively for you.